We all remember this scene, right? But what does it mean? Well, first, let's do a little recap. Sam and Ursula went down into this fungus-infested cave, where the air was filled with fungal spores, and they saw various dead bodies that had been overtaken by the fungus. But as they were leaving, they heard a human groan, and we see this mass move. And then the fungus around Ursula starts moving, and turns into a human face. A massive, writhing human face. Ursula destroys it, but then she starts to hyperventilate, and her mask comes off and she inhales the spores in the air, and the fungus overtakes her. But then she wakes up and seems fine. So, was this a hallucination, or was there something else going on? Well, there is no visual indicator that it was a hallucination. Usually, when there is a hallucination in a show, the scene either becomes wavy or the lighting changes. In fact, we see this in Scavengers' Reign when Levi dreams. The lighting is different, which hints to viewers that it is a dream before it is revealed to be so. Even the perspective and framing of Ozzy hints that this is a dream. And many of Cayman's hallucinations are clearly visually different to normal scenes, particularly the first hallucination. And sure, some of Cayman's hallucinations aren't visually different from other scenes, but by then it's already been established that Fiona is a hallucination. And the other thing is that Sam conveniently floated away before the fungus overtaking Ursula happened. If he had been present in that scene with Ursula, it would have been clear that this was just a hallucination. Now, the first thing that indicates that there is something else going on is the human groan.
Wait, did you hear that?
Ursula and Sam both hear this, and it is Sam who hears it first. So, we know it is real. Then, the black mass moving during the groan is also suspicious. The fungus creating a human groan could indicate that the fungus absorbs the consciousness or knowledge of its victims and copies them. And then, this fungal mass turns into a human face, and it seems to be Ursula's face. And let's say this scene was a hallucination. After the so-called hallucination ended, Ursula sees the remains of the fungus face. So at the very least, we know this was not a hallucination. Although I don't think this was either. Anyway, my point is, the fungus clearly has the goal to copy other animals, as evidenced by the groan and the face. And this copying can't be random. It has to have a purpose, because every ecological function in this show, like the exploding clone or the parasite, has a purpose. There had to be an end goal behind the fungus copying humans. So, what if the end goal is to create a full copy and send them out into the world to spread the fungus's spores? It could be that when Ursula inhaled the fungal spores, the fungus was able to map out her mind and body, and then it killed her and replaced her with a copy. Maybe this sounds a little crazy, but the fact that the fungus could groan and copy human faces indicates that it is sentient and has higher mind functions. And we already know from this creature that there are things in this world that can go into other beings' minds and manipulate them. So, the fungus copy, seeming to have Ursula's memories and personality, can be explained by the fungus going into her mind and scanning it, similar to how this creature went into Cayman's mind, and even seemed to absorb Cayman's personality and memories into itself, as we see that it seemed to be emotional towards Fiona's body as it lay next to her and got upset when the body was disturbed. My point is, I think that when we see this, that is Ursula dying, and then the next time we see Ursula, it is a fungal copy. We also see that some of the dead bodies on the Demeter are infected with fungus, like the bodies down in that hole. I think these could be the same fungus. I propose that the way the fungus works is that it creates copies of creatures. Those copies then spread fungus spores, which infect dead bodies. And when there are enough dead bodies with the fungus, those dead bodies put the fungus in the air. There will be enough of the fungus in the air that, if breathed in by a creature, the fungus will scan their mind and DNA, kill them, and then make a copy of them. And then that copy will go out to spread fungus spores. And the cycle repeats. I know what you are thinking. What about her clothes? Because a fungal copy of Ursula couldn't have stolen the original's clothes, as we see that the fungus ripped through the clothing. But later, Ursula's clothing isn't ripped. Well, remember how Sam was cloned by that weird plant? For some reason, his clone had fleshy versions of his clothes. We can clearly see that his clone is wearing a fleshy copy of Sam's red shirt. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for this clone to have what resembles Sam's clothes, especially since it seems that this clone was just made from Sam's blood. But if this clone can grow Sam's clothes, I don't think that it is too much of a stretch to say that a fungal clone of Ursula could also grow clothes. Maybe it is just cartoon logic, although I do have an actual possible explanation. So, Sam's clone grew fleshy clothes and appeared to be the exact same age as him. This could indicate that this thing not only took Sam's blood, but scanned his mind to get his knowledge of his own physical appearance. Sam knows what he looks like, so this plant needle could have extracted that information from his mind to build a more accurate clone. And if the fungus truly did go into Ursula's mind, like I suggest, then I think that it could have done a similar thing. However, it also imitated what seems to be Ursula's face early on, so perhaps the fungus could just see Ursula's clothing and copy it based on what it saw. Of course, Sam's clone has fleshy clothes that are actually part of it, while Ursula, after the fungus incident, clearly has real clothes. But obviously the fungus would work differently to the cloning plant, so perhaps the fungus accurately recreated the clothes, which kind of makes sense since clothes can be made from organic materials like fungus. We do see here that Ursula's equipment, like her backpack, wasn't damaged by the fungus. So the fungus copy could have grown clothes, but then just taken the backpack, watch, and dagger. Anyway, I don't think that Ursula knows that she is a fungal copy, because it has copied her mind. She has no idea. And look at this. Ursula gets overtaken by the fungus, but then the screen blacks and it shows her waking up. But why is she waking up? When was she asleep? Well, if she was a fungus copy, this must be her coming alive or activating. And, perhaps before she activated, she took the original's backpack, watch, and dagger. After taking everything she needed to be an indistinguishable copy, then she finally activated and woke up. However, I don't think the fungus fully copied Ursula's mind. I think it was able to copy a limited amount of memories, so it only copied memories going so far back. This would explain why we get a backstory for every other character except Ursula. Sam talks about his girlfriend Sarah. Ozzy remembers her past on the ship with Mia, and Cayman remembers Fiona extensively. But for Ursula, we get nothing. The only scene from Ursula's past we got was this scene where she was in the ship. but this scene was part of the flashback where the ship was getting hit by the solar flare. This scene was part of a montage with all the other characters. Ursula herself was not remembering this scene. And we know that Ursula has loved ones because in episode 1, we see she has pictures of herself with them. She must have cared about them significantly to display pictures of them, and the fact she even had them means that when the ship was being evacuated, she must have either grabbed them before leaving, or she must have already had them on her. Either scenario means these photos are very important to her. Despite all this, Ursula never once mentions the people in these photos, or shows evidence of remembering them. And you'd think that she would have mentioned them to Sam when he was talking about his girlfriend. But this happened in episode 1, so I think the Ursula we see after this is a copy, and she doesn't have memories that go back far enough to her memories of her family and loved ones. This would explain why we saw these photos in episode 1, but Ursula doesn't display them in her new workspace at the end of the last episode. And after this scene happened, Ursula seems different. She gets lost in the world, with the most significant example being in episode 3. Ursula and Sam are trying to get out of the moving wall, but Ursula gets distracted by a shining light and abandons Sam to go to it. She then reaches out to touch it. Remember, Ursula is a biologist, and touching a random glowing plant on an alien planet is a really stupid thing to do, and you'd think a biologist would know better. But Ursula being a fungal copy connected to the planet would explain her doing this. It would also explain why she abandoned Sam, and why she seems to have a connection to this flower and the little alien in it. Ursula truly gets mesmerized with the flower and alien, staring at it for who knows how long. And Ursula even admits that she doesn't really know what she was doing in there, and she says she believes that she was communicating with the alien.
Are you okay?
That was incredible. I can't believe what I just saw.
Wait, what? What the hell were you doing in there?
I don't know. I think we were talking to each other. No, wait, that's not quite right. It's hard to explain. It was fascinating.
Talking to who, Ursula? You're not making any sense.
So, Ursula saying all that definitely leads me to believe that she has a natural connection to the planet and its creatures due to being a fungal copy. Additionally, Sam's reaction indicated that her abandoning him and acting like that is uncharacteristic of her, or at least the Ursula Sam knows. And Ursula being a fungal copy would explain why the environment around her reacts to her positively, in contrast with Sam. First of all, Sam gets bitten by that bug creature, but when the bug creature first comes down, it looks at Ursula first, but then it ignores her and goes after Sam. Then Sam gets spiked by that clone plant, causing him to get sick. Lastly, he gets that awful parasite put in him. All of this is presented as dumb luck. It is not like Ursula was being smarter in these situations because she was a biologist. It could have easily been her in these situations, right? Well, what if, because she is a fungal copy, the environment largely just leaves her alone? It could be that the fungus gives off some sort of scent that wards off threats. Additionally, after episode 1, Ursula seems to know the world better than Sam and have uncanny instincts. Although, this could just be explained by her being a biologist who studies the environment, while Sam is not. And Ursula being a fungal copy would parallel the arcs of the other characters. A big theme of Scavengers' reign is change, especially biological change due to the planet. Levi, for example, was changed by the yellow fungus and was completely remade into an organic being connected to the planet. Then, Cayman's mind was influenced by that creature, and he even became one with it for a while. Even though he has been separated from it, it does still seem like it has permanently changed him. And of course, we have Sam. Sam was infected with a parasite, which altered his mind, making him do its bidding. And Sam was permanently changed, physically and mentally, by that parasite. Ursula turning out to be a fungal copy would be a marvelous parallel to Sam. Ursula was afraid that Sam was compromised, and didn't believe that she could trust him. And her being a fungal copy would make her fear of Sam very ironic because she herself would be compromised. And she could also be a danger to those around her, because the purpose of the fungus creating a copy of the original Ursula would be to spread its spores, so Ursula is likely a carrier of the spores which could infect other people around her. In conclusion, I think that Ursula died in this scene and was replaced with a fungal copy. I think this because we already know that the fungus has some capacity to copy creatures, including humans, as Sam and Ursula heard human groans, and then this happened. The attention to the detail of the biological functions of the other plants and animals in this show leads me to believe that there must be a reason the fungus was copying humans here. The fungus must have had a goal. And what makes the most sense is that the goal was to create a full copy, to send out into the world to spread its spores and help it reproduce. Very similar to the purpose of the clones created by these cloning plants. The fungal copy of Ursula seeming to have the same memories and personality as her could be explained by the fungus scanning and mapping out her mind when she inhaled it. And since this creature had the power to get into Cayman's mind and access his memories, then I don't see why another organism couldn't have a similar ability. But Ursula would have had so many memories, and it does sound a bit ridiculous and unnecessary for a fungal copy to copy all of the original's memories. So, I don't think the original Ursula's mind was fully copied. I think only memories going back so far were copied. And this would explain why every other character's backstory is explored, but we don't get this for Ursula. Even though we know that Ursula had family, because she was displaying these pictures in her room in episode 1. Ursula being a fungal copy would also explain her reaction and experience with that flower and the alien. And it would explain why the environment reacts positively to her, unlike Sam, and why she seems to automatically know things about the environment. While Ursula's clothes after the scene not being ripped or damaged might seem to disprove her being a fungal copy, we have to remember that Sam's clone was wearing fleshy versions of the real Sam's clothes. If this plant can create fleshy clothes, then maybe the fungus could create more realistic clothes, since clothing can be made of organic material like fungus. And the fungus does seem to be more advanced than the cloning plant, since the fungus managed to create this. And of course, I don't think this scene where Ursula was overtaken by the fungus was a hallucination, because there is no lighting or animation difference that indicates that it is a hallucination, unlike these scenes that were confirmed to be hallucinations or dreams. Lastly, Ursula being a fungal copy would fit in with all these other characters who were biologically changed by things from this planet, and her being a fungal copy would especially parallel what happened with Sam. Feel free to like and subscribe.